There is a book that the Catholic Church banned for 200 years, a book that kings kept hidden under their pillows while publicly calling it the work of the devil. Businessmen, politicians, warlords, everyone secretly reads it. Everyone publicly denies it. And it was written by a man who had lost everything. He wasn't trying to change the world. He was trying to get his job back. The most powerful men in history kept his book by their bedside. The man who wrote it couldn't even get hired. And the reason he wrote it isn't what you think. Florence, 1469. Niccolò Machiavelli was born into a family with a fancy name and almost no money, which meant he had to be clever. He read everything: Roman history, Greek philosophy, military strategy. Not because anyone told him to, because he genuinely could not stop. In 1498, Florence got a new government, and Machiavelli got a job, second chancellor of the Republic. For 14 years, he was everywhere: diplomatic missions, military advice, political strategy. He was, by all accounts, very good at this. But the moment that changed everything came in 1502, when Florence sent him to negotiate with a man named Cesare Borgia. Cesare Borgia was the son of Pope Alexander VI. He had conquered half of central Italy in 3 years. He poisoned his enemies, bribed his allies, and changed sides whenever it suited him. And Machiavelli watched him and was fascinated. Not because Cesare was good, but because Cesare worked. Where other rulers hesitated, Cesare acted. Where others worried about being liked, Cesare only worried about being obeyed. And somehow, it worked better. What if everything Machiavelli had ever been taught about politics was simply wrong? Now, here's where his life completely falls apart, and where the real story begins. In 1512, everything collapsed. The Medici returned to power. The republic Machiavelli had served for 14 years was dissolved in a single afternoon. He was fired. And then it got worse. A few months later, his name appeared on a list of men accused of plotting against the Medici. It was almost certainly a mistake. Almost. He was tortured 6 times. The strappato, hung by his wrist tied behind his back, then dropped to dislocate his shoulders. Most people at this point would confess to anything. Machiavelli seemed mostly annoyed that it was interrupting his career. In fact, he wrote a poem about it from the cell, while it was happening, and used it to politely ask the Medici for his old job back, which tells you basically everything you need to know about Niccolò Machiavelli. He was released when a new pope was elected, a general amnesty, but exiled to his farm outside Florence, banned from the city. The days were difficult, but every evening something changed. He wrote about it himself in a letter to a friend. "I shed my everyday clothes and put on royal and courtly garments. Reclothed appropriately, I entered the ancient courts of ancient men." For 4 hours every night, he read history and wrote. Everything he'd observed, everyone he'd studied, every failure and success he'd witnessed, it went into one book. He dedicated it to Lorenzo de' Medici, the man whose family had fired and imprisoned him. Not because he admired him, because he needed a job. Lorenzo received the book. Along with it, someone else had also sent him a gift that day: 2 hunting dogs. Lorenzo was more excited about the dogs. Machiavelli heard nothing back. He spent the next years writing comedies, histories, and military theory, not because it earned him anything, but because he could not stop thinking. Eventually, the Medici gave him one small assignment: writing a history of Florence. Not quite the senior political advisor position he had in mind. And then history played the cruelest joke of all. In 1527, Florence finally expelled the Medici. The Republic was restored, everything Machiavelli had waited for. But now, he was seen as a Medici collaborator. The new Republic didn't want him either. He had managed to be the wrong person for every government for his entire career. A few weeks later, he died, June 1527. He was 58 years old. The Prince had never been published in his lifetime. 5 years after his death, The Prince was finally published. Within decades, it had reached every court in Europe. The Catholic Church banned it in 1559, which is, historically, the best thing that can happen to a book. Napoleon kept a heavily annotated copy, so did Catherine the Great, so did Mussolini, Stalin, and Henry Kissinger. We know this because they all admitted it, eventually. Remember the question from the start? Why he really wrote it? Here's the answer everyone misses. People read The Prince and call it a manual for evil, but Machiavelli wasn't writing a guide for tyrants. A broken, tortured man, exiled on a farm, sat down and wrote the most honest thing anyone had ever dared to say about power. Not because he wanted to use it, because he finally understood it. He spent 14 years watching the most powerful people in Europe, and what he saw was this. The ones who lasted weren't the most virtuous, they were the most realistic. He wasn't the first person to notice it, he was just the first honest enough to write it down. Niccolò Machiavelli spent his entire life trying to understand power. He never really had any, but everyone who did learned from him. So here's the real question. Was Machiavelli evil, or was he just the only one honest enough to say out loud what everyone in power already knew? Tell me what you think.